Greetings, Jess Montgomery here for today's Tea with Jess. Um, I made this little mug. Well, I designed it. I didn't really make it. Let's see. Can't tell if it's showing up very well in the camera. Oh, there we go. So it's not particularly on brand because it's kind of whimsical. As you can see from the cartoon granny and the cartoon rocker, there it's focusing, and the cartoon kitty. It says, "Life is hard, have tea," Nana says. Um, I guess it's okay to be a little whimsical, even if it's not on brand. But I'm here to chat with you about some questions I've received from readers and viewers. Thank you for tuning in and for just kind of wanting to get to know me a little bit better. And I'm getting to know you a little bit better through your questions. So keep those coming. So the first question I wanted to answer was a very intriguing question from a few weeks ago from Christine Holtkamp. And I apologize in advance if I'm not pronouncing any names correctly. But Christine Holtkamp asked if there was one person I could have return for 24 hours, who would that be? Um, and at first I thought, maybe I should answer with a famous person. And then I thought, you know what? I think I will answer a little more personally. So the person I would have return would be my grandmother, Lou. So Grandma Lou was my father's mother. And I have a lot of great memories of her from when I was a child, but my parents divorced when I was about 15, and it wasn't the most amicable, shall we say, of divorces. And so sadly, for a long time when that split happened, I was also split from my father's family, which has since been long corrected. But as a kid, you don't get a whole lot of control over these things. And as a young adult, it's hard to know how to deal with it a little later on. So sadly, my grandmother Lou passed away before we could reconnect. And so I would ask to have Grandma Lou back. I would want to talk with her about several things. She was really super smart. She was really always steady and quiet, but very aware of what was going on around her. Looking back, I think that's true. What I remember as a kid was I loved it when we'd show up at her house after a long drive through the winding, roads through the hills of Appalachia. We'd get to her little house in eastern Kentucky, and she'd have some treat waiting. And the one that stands out for some reason in my mind is dried apple stack cake and a big icy cold glass of milk. And there was something very comforting about that, and about how she always had a root cellar filled with all kinds of home canned goods. And I still love to home can. I home can green beans, I home can tomatoes. Um, so yeah, her home was a very comforting place. And I'd like to chat with her more about, her life and what it was like for her. And also, looking back, she did several things for me that, as kids do, that, I took for granted at the time. But she sent me a package when I was probably 8, and it included a pair of beautiful yellow shoes, patent leather, yellow Mary Jane shoes. And I thought these were amazing and the height of fashion. Who wouldn't love a good pair of yellow patent leather Mary Jane shoes? And I've kind of been on a quest ever since, for about 10 years or so for not yellow patent leather shoes. I'm not sure I could pull that off at my age, but for a pair of yellow shoes that evoke those shoes. And I found them um, about a month before before the pandemic hit. And since I'm not going to be wearing them to events anytime soon, I thought I would show you my yellow shoes. But she got these shoes and a book for me, put my shoes back on, at a Save the Children Federation thrift shop. And I've always wondered what about me made her think those yellow shoes would be great for my granddaughter. And she also sent me this book, which I do have the original of still, called Mystery on Hopkins Island by Elizabeth Ogilvy. Oh my gosh, this book was a revelation to me. I've talked about it on panels before. Um, because it's a mystery. It stars a young woman named Bun, short for Burnsides. It was written in the 60s, well before I was of the correct reading age for this book. Um, and so I got it probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years after it was published. And Bun enters a writing contest, and she is allowed to choose if she gets enough money for a year of college, like $1,000, shows you how long ago this was published, or an island called Hopkins Island. And she can go to Hopkins Island. So she chooses the island, of course. I like to think wearing yellow shoes. And she goes to the island and she meets an adorable lobster man who's so much older than her. She's 16, he's 17. And she and he and her siblings who are with her solve a mystery. Thus, Mystery on Hopkins Island. So while everybody else references Nancy Drew, and don't get me wrong, I love Nancy Drew, I'd say that book was formative in me loving mysteries. And it checked so many boxes for me. It told me you can go have adventures beyond the home that you're in now. You can be a writer and win things, get paid in islands. You can think about mysteries and solve them. You can meet interesting people. So it was revelatory for me. So I'd love to ask her about kind of what was going through her mind when she put together that little package for me, and find out a bit more about her life. I've learned a lot about her life from my dad, who passed on about a year and a half ago, and from my aunts and cousins, and from my memories of her. But I'd love to know. I'd love to just spend 24 hours with her, have some tea. I think she would agree. Life is hard. Have tea. Um, yeah, she definitely understood that life is hard. Sometimes you have to pause and have tea and just to get to know her a little bit more. So that's who I would bring back. Thank you for asking me that, Christine, and for getting me to kind of think about my grandma Lou in this way. It was a treat to do that. So thank you. Another reader asked about a favorite author at different eras of my life. For example, as a teenager, early adulthood, etc. And I've kind of answered that because of and if anybody's read this book, Mystery on Hopkins Island, hello, Pauline, um, please email me. I would love to have a chat with you. If anybody else knows this book, I would love to have a chat with you. Um, so, other books that were very influential for me would have to be Harriet the Spy, Louise Fitzhugh. I think that's an answer a lot of people would give. But I read that book, I remember getting up to 13 times over in seventh grade. And I think it helped me get through seventh grade. And again, it taught me, you can be curious. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to be different. It's okay to make notes about your observation. It's okay to have your own opinions about the people around you and adults, if you're a kid or if you're an adult. And it made writing seem like a normal way to process the world. And Harriet the Spy also made being curious seem like a normal way to approach the world. So definitely Harriet the Spy. Another one, Linda, would be definitely John Steinbeck. I love John Steinbeck's writing. I try to reread The Pearl about once a year. Obviously, I loved Grapes of Wrath. Just what he did with social justice themes as a writer, the beauty of the writing, the way he brought the world and the people um, around him alive. Hello, Tony. I love seeing people pop in and say hi. um, and he just, he brought alive these working class characters, which obviously fits what I am writing. Um, and he brought to life in a non preachy way the social justice issues of his day with beautiful language, riveting plot, and believable characters. So, John Steinbeck for sure. Okay, I have two more questions. One was from Tracy Weirick, and she asked a couple weeks ago, do you take a notepad with you wherever you go in case an idea for a book comes to mind? And the answer is yes, not that I'm going a ton of places right now, but I do keep a little notepad in my purse. And I love the record button on the notes um, app on the phone um, because if I'm driving, I can, obviously in a safe way, maybe pull off and start the recorder and record some ideas out loud. And I've actually captured several scenes with either the Notes app or the or freebie little recording app that I have on my phone when I've been on long trips by myself. I will share that once I was on a long-ish drive to see our older daughter who used to live in Wisconsin, and the radio stopped working, and I didn't think to download any audiobooks. And this idea that had been playing in the back of my head started telling itself to me. So I turned on the recorder and I just dictated a whole story into the recorder. So we'll see if I ever do anything with that story. Let's see. And the final question. Karen Olson asked me, I love this question, what's your favorite part of the whole writing process? So I would say the writing process, if we're breaking it down into phases, has the brainstorming part, like where you have an idea, you're brainstorming, you're thinking up characters' backgrounds, what's the plot going to be? You're drafting, then you're revising, and then of course you're editing and proofreading, and that's a very rough division. The truth is these things aren't done in a silo. You're kind of looped back and forth with all of them for a while until you finally have something that's kind of set. So Karen, I would say that my favorite part is revising. I love revising. This is different than the proofreading and the spell, checking the spelling and the grammar and the details like that. But the actual rewriting, the revising of a decent draft is my favorite part because then you can really start to play with it and bring in details and, I love that part. Close behind it would be the brainstorming, the creating of the idea at the very beginning. I mentioned in between those, of course, is drafting. You have to have some words on paper to make that brainstorming come to life and to revise later on. And actually, I do not like drafting. That is by far, my least favorite part. And I think it's because I have a hard time, and I've gotten better about it, but I have a hard time turning off the little critics in my head that are telling me, well, that's not a very beautiful sentence. That's not very good. Why did you write that? You could have written this. And of course, that gets in the way of drafting. So I think it's that internal struggle that makes drafting my least favorite part. So those are all wonderful questions. What I'm going to do next Monday is Memorial Day. And the original Memorial Day was actually set, obviously, for the last Monday in May, but also at 3 p.m. I did not realize that until I went to double check. Wait, next Monday is Memorial Day, right? So next Monday at 3 p.m., which is the historical time to celebrate Memorial Day or remember people. I'm not sure celebrate's the right word. I'm going to read a short, don't worry, it's short, essay that I wrote several years ago. It is on brand in that it is not whimsical, but I hope it's comforting to people. who might have lost someone. Um, and in these difficult times, I hope it's comforting to people. So I'm going to share an essay next week, and then after that, I'll continue to answer questions and interview writers, maybe interview artists that create in other ways other than in the written word. And so again, thank you for joining me and for Tea with Jess, my whimsical, not on brand mug. Oh, and don't forget, if you don't already, to follow me on Facebook or like me on Facebook or Instagram. Come to my book, Jess Montgomery Book Friends group. We have fun there with extra content there. And if you get a chance and you're there, follow me on BookBub as well. But most importantly, be kind to each other, stay well, read a good book, and thank you so much for being here with me today.